Hello and welcome back to my channel if you're new here. My name is Luca. Today I have a video that I'm actually very excited for because I'm going to be talking about all of my favorite books from 2024. I was supposed to do a top 10, however I'm very indecisive so I couldn't choose. So I have like a top 11 and then I also have about 5 honorary mentions that I didn't make it onto the favorites list, but if I were to do a top 15, like these would be on it, except that it's a top 16. Anyway, I think I had 2 5-star reads this year, and that's not a lot, but I did have a lot of 4.5 star, like 4.25 star. The first book is like a 4-star and then everything else is above a 4-star. So let's just get into it. Okay, so the first honorary mention is actually Daydream by Hannah Grace. This is the 3rd book in the Maple Hills series, I believe, and this one follows Henry, which that's a character that you get to know from the first book, and I was waiting like on the edge of my seat to get his book because I loved him from, I think Icebreaker, yeah, was the first book. I was kind of like Wildfire, Icebreaker, whatever. So anyway, you get to know him in Icebreaker and he was my favorite character. Like, he was not the main character, but he was my favorite, and I was waiting for his book. And it didn't disappoint necessarily, but I thought I was going to give this 5 stars and I didn't. I think I gave it like 3.84 stars. So that's why it's on the honorary mention list. I did really love them together. It's about Henry and Holly, and she is tutoring him, I think, because he struggles with a lot of things that neurodivergent people struggle with. However, it's not like they didn't put a label on him necessarily that he has like ADHD or whatever, but he does struggle with those things and she helps him with that, and he was so relatable. Both of these characters were so incredibly relatable, and I really enjoyed them. He was so patient with her and I really liked it. So if you read other books in this series, enjoyed them, have not read this one, read it. Even if you haven't read any of the books in that series, I would recommend personally to read Icebreaker because I loved that one when I read it. I don't think I would love it as much now, but I still think I would really enjoy it. And then I would skip Wildfire. I did not like that one, but I did really like this one, so I would read those 2. So yeah, loved this book. It wasn't my favorite. It was a bit dragged out. It's a bit long, and it was kind of like the characters communicated so well in this book that it was kind of boring at times. Like, not boring, but there wasn't too much drama. It's New Year's Eve tonight, so if you hear fireworks in the background, I'm so sorry. People are just too excited, I guess. So what was I saying? Oh yeah, not that much drama, and the way the drama unfolded, they just communicated so well that it was sometimes a bit boring to read. Like, I am always saying, like, I hate miscommunication in books, but sometimes it's actually really realistic, and I did think at some point, well, like, you are 20-year-old students, you're not psychologists. It just felt like psychologists talking sometimes and being like communicating their feelings. I'm like, that's not just, it wasn't realistic in that way, but I did really enjoy it. I liked it. Then I read In the Likely Event by Rebecca. Anyway, then we have In the Likely Event by Rebecca Yarros, who is the author of Fourth Wing. That's why I picked this book up, because I loved that book and also Iron Flame. I really liked this one, and so I kind of also want to try out her other romance series. Hello, is it focusing on me? No. What I really enjoyed about this book is that the stakes were so high for a normal romance book, because it's about Izzy and Nate, and they meet when they are sat next together on a plane, and then the plane goes down, so they are in a plane crash together, and so they kind of have this like trauma bond thing, and they fall in love. And then you have the past timeline where that all happens, and then in the present timeline they are estranged, so they are no longer speaking, but they meet each other again in Afghanistan, which is obviously a very dangerous place because I think this takes place in like 2007 or something. And so the stakes were very high for a normal romance book, which I really loved. And I just love the whole dual timeline thing. It's very common, like loads of books use that kind of format, but I still really enjoyed it. I think I gave this 4 stars, 4.25 or something. Then I have The Serpent and the Wings of Night by Carissa Broadbent. I also really enjoyed this one. I think I gave this one 4 stars as well. I really enjoyed it. It was a bit slow to get into, and it didn't like grasp my attention at all times. When everything started going down, it was so captivating and I could not put it down. The cliffhanger in this book is also absolutely insane. It's a Hunger Games vampire trial thing, but the main girl, who is not a vampire, is entering in these trials, and she meets someone there, a vampire, and they fall in love. And I did really like the guy. He wasn't like my absolute favorite, but I loved this book, the second book in this series, The Ashes of the Star-Cursed King or something. I DNF'd that one for now, like it's a soft DNF. I am going to finish it, but I didn't love it as much as this one, so I gave this one 4 stars. but then afterwards I just didn't really love where the story was going, but I would really recommend this one because it was incredibly cool and the tension was great in this one. Then I have a book that has been on my TBR since I started reading, and that's Archer's Voice by Mia Sheridan. I loved this book. It was so sweet and so pure and so soft-hearted. I have never read a book where the boy was this, like, this is the epitome of the soft boy trope. He was so incredibly sweet and so, like, disconnected from the normal world, and the girl comes in, Bree. It's about Archer and Bree, but I think Archer is kind of self-explanatory. And then Bree comes in and she kind of shows him again what it's like to have a friend and to have like normal human connection. And so it was so incredibly beautiful. I was thinking about giving it 5 stars at some point, and then it got way too cheesy for my liking, so I bumped it down to 4.25, but I did really enjoy this one, and I would very much recommend it. Then I have The Right Move by Liz Tomford. This was also the same thing, where I was contemplating giving it 5 stars. I was giggling, kicking my feet after I'd been in a reading slump, kind of like a reading slump. So I was so happy to be reading this book, but then the spice scenes got a bit much for me and the guy was suddenly turning into like a dominant alpha male thing, and I don't love that. So I gave this one 4.25 stars as well. It was so good. This was fake dating. It was so incredibly good. And the guy, I loved him, Ryan. It was very much Grumpy Sunshine. It was fake dating. It was forced proximity because she moved in with him. He is a famous basketball player, I think, so he doesn't trust people easily because he had been used before for like his money and his status and his whatever. And then they start fake dating and he just like, they start getting close, and it was so well done. I did not love this first book in the series as much, Mile High, but then I would also, this is a series, I would skip the first one and then read this one, and then Caught Up is the next one in the series, and then Play Along. I would read all of those. This one was great. I think I gave it 4.5 at the time, but I think it's like a 4.5 thing. I loved this one. The girl was also very sweet, very funny, very corky, like very just sunshine. And it was just very good. Then we have The Graham Effect by Elle Kennedy. I have such a love-hate relationship with Elle Kennedy because when I love her books, I love them. They're so good. She does the hooky romance thing so well. But then I've also read books by her where I was like, I don't love this, and I always go in open-minded, and I'm always like rooting for her and like rooting for the book, but this one was fantastic. I loved it so much. Again, I was contemplating giving it 5 stars at the time. However, something happened at the end that surprised me and that felt so out of character that I bumped it down half a star, I think. I was very stingy with my 5 stars this year, and I don't want to do that next year. But I just got into this like kind of weird cycle where I was thinking, okay, what if my 5-star read is this, and I loved that book so much, I loved this a little bit less. So then I was like, okay, then I can't give it 5 stars. So then I wouldn't give it 5 stars, and then later on in the year I was like, I have had barely any 5 stars and I love this book, I could give it 5 stars. And then I was like, well, I think I love it about as much as the one that I didn't give 5 stars, so then I also can't give this one 5 stars. And I need to stop doing that. I need to just go with my gut in the moment, and maybe a book that I give 5 stars I love just as much as one that I gave 4.5. So that's going to be something for next year, but I got completely off track and we're talking about this book. So I gave this one 4.5 stars. I loved this. It's a spin-off series from the Off Campus series. So you have the Off Campus series, then you have a spin-off series, and that's the Briar U series, and then you have another spin-off series, which is this one from the Off Campus series. So this story is about the daughter from the couple in the first book from the Off Campus series, and that's my favorite out of all of them. Like, I love Gerrit Graham with all my heart, and I loved Hannah and Gerrit's story. That's a book that like made me fall in love with reading. Like, that was one of the first books that I absolutely loved and got obsessed with. And then so when I heard that the kid was gonna get a book, I was so excited. However, I was like, I'm never going to love this as much as like the original series. This book was so well done. It dropped hints about all the other characters that I loved from the other series, and Gerrit Graham made so many cameos. Okay, sorry, I got interrupted, so if the frame and also the lighting are a bit different, I'm sorry, there's nothing that can be done. Also, it's December and it's 3 o'clock in the afternoon, but it's incredibly dark, and so unfortunately the lighting turned absolute arse, so I had to improvise, so this is probably the best it's going to get. I'm sorry. Anyway, I was talking about the fact that this book had so many great cameos from the old characters, so if you loved the Off Campus series and even the Briar U series, I would highly recommend this one. It was so good, and sometimes in books, like in romance books, they try a bit too hard with the nicknames, or like they can feel cringy or cheesy or whatever, these were fantastic. I was giggling out loud. The banter in this was incredible, and it was kind of like a rivals-ish to lovers, not enemies to lovers, because I don't like that. And I think it was fake dating. I just remember that it was fantastic, and I will probably reread this at some point because I loved it that much. I gave this 4.5 stars at the time. Then I have another book that I should have read a long time ago and I didn't, so I read it this year. It's Malibu Rising by Taylor Jenkins Reid. I also love this cover. I read it in the summer, so that's very fitting. I really enjoyed this. I think I gave this 4.25, 4.5 stars, I think, like somewhere around that range. I hate Meg Riva. Like, I would love to crawl into this book and kill him. Like, if that was possible, I would slaughter him. I hated him so much, like, as everyone does. I loved the sibling aspect and just the found family aspect of this book, and it was so incredibly beautiful. I love reading about sibling relationships, but this was extraordinary because they were put into very unfortunate circumstances by their father, Meg Riva. He was horrible. Like, I cannot stress that enough. I shed a few tears with this book because it was so moving and touching and well written. This was so incredibly well written, and I can't wait to read more of her books because I read One True Loves by her. I gave that 5 stars. I loved that one last year, and then I also really loved this one. Going into it, I thought that I was not going to love this book as much as I ended up loving it because there wasn't that much romance in it, and it was about surfing, and I was like, well, I mean, sounds fun but not great. She made it great. This was fantastic, and I loved this book. And for a standalone book, the characters were so well fleshed out and just so incredibly, there was so much depth to them, and they had very distinctive personalities, and you could find someone to relate to in like different things that happened, and it was just very good. So 4.5, 4.25 stars, and I would highly recommend it. Again, these books are not in any particular order because then I have a book that I gave 4 stars and that I read, like, I think I finished this one last week. I also gave this one 4 stars, 4.25. I loved this book. This was so incredibly good. It was fake dating. It was very much golden retriever, not really black cat-ish, but like very, very much golden retriever. He was so flirty, so incredibly sweet, and I loved him. Rory Miller, I loved him. I was not expecting to love this book because I hated the first one, Behind the Net, and I don't say the word hate lightly. I do actually, but I despised that book, and I don't say that word lightly. I did not like that one. Like, I don't want to offend anyone because if you loved that book, I don't think anything of your taste. We all love different books for different reasons. I just really did not like that one. I thought it was so cringy, so badly written, and just I rolled my eyes so many times, and so I DNF'd that one at like 55% or something. And then I went into this one because this is the reason that I actually bought those two in the first place. And I had heard so many great things about this book, and I loved it. I loved it. I was so pleasantly surprised because I didn't like Behind the Net, was it? Yeah. I didn't like Behind the Net that much. My expectations for this were quite low because I was like, okay, well, obviously I don't love her writing style. I can't believe that this is in the same series and that it's written by the same author. Like, I cannot believe that, but I think characters make or break the book because I just didn't like the characters in the first book. I loved these people. Hazel and Rory, I loved them and I loved their story. This was boy obsessed. He was so incredibly obsessed with her, and oh, I want him. Like, this is what I want. I want a Rory Miller. Rory Miller was the absolute blueprint for what I want in a book boyfriend. He was so incredibly sweet and fun and caring and patient and just super flirty and golden retriever, and I was giggling and kicking my feet. I loved this book. The only reason I was also, again, thinking about giving it 5 stars, and then the only reason I didn't, because I do with this entire series, I'm reading the 3rd one now, I do feel like the spice kind of overtakes the plot and the characters and just everything at one point, and then I kind of become bored. And then I'm just reading about them doing it and I don't care about that. So that's kind of what bumped this down, I think like 0.75 or something for me. So I think I gave this 4 stars, 4.25. And I would highly recommend this one. I would recommend that you skip the first one. If you want to try it, be my guest. And you might love it because I've heard so many great things about that book as well. But this one is so much better. Like, this was, if you love fake dating, this one was so, so good. If you like golden retriever, black cat-ish, whatever, boy obsessed and fake dating, read this book. It was so good. The spice kind of overtakes it, so if you don't want to read spice, maybe don't pick up the series because it's very spicy, in my opinion, but I really, really enjoyed both of these characters. And I loved it. Then I have a book that also very much surprised me. I did not think that I was going to love this one as much as I did, and that's Bride by Ali Hazelwood. I think so many people have the same feelings towards this book that I do, where you did not expect to really... I expected to like this book, but I did not expect to love it as much as I did. It was highly ridiculous, absolutely highly ridiculous. It's about a werewolf vampire arranged marriage kind of thing, and it's like about fated mates and all that crap. And I had never read something like that before because it didn't really interest me. However, I do like Ali Hazelwood's writing. It's a bit quirky and cheesy and over the top rom-com-y sometimes, but I really enjoy it. They're fun, easy, quick reads, and this one is definitely my favorite Ali Hazelwood book, so I think that she should write more paranormal romances because she did a fantastic job. And I really liked the guy in this book. What I loved about this book is the fact that where the story was going, like an arranged marriage and she was shipped off to live with a werewolf, she's a vampire and whatever, I was expecting a very grumpy, mean guy to be like the love interest. He was super sweet, like super caring. He takes care of his little sister, and guys who take in books, male main characters that take care of their little siblings are my kryptonite. I've said this before, I love that trope in a book. And that was this, and I did not expect that because I did not know that going into it. And so this book pleasantly surprised me. It wasn't a 5-star because it didn't give me the 5-star feeling, but I think I gave this one 4.5 stars at the time. I really enjoyed it. And I, again, think that she should write more romances like this because I will read all of them. Then I have a book that I enjoyed so much over the summer. I have Happy Place by Emily Henry. This one also pleasantly surprised me because I like Emily Henry's writing, but I never fell in love with it the way the entire world seemed to have fallen in love with her writing. I think I gave Beach Read like 3.8 stars, and then People We Meet on Vacation 3.5, and then also Funny Story 3.5 or something, 3.8, in that range. This one, I loved it. I loved the friendship aspect. It was just so incredibly realistic and heartbreaking and heartfelt and also very sweet, and I just loved the characters so much. I loved Win, I loved Harriet, I loved the setting, I loved all of it. I keep saying it. I loved it, I loved it, I loved it. I don't know how many times I'm going to say that in this video, but I really, really did love this book. I think I gave this 4.25, 4.5 stars because this was also a book where I was like, well, I enjoyed it less than this book, but more than this book, and then I just need to stop rating books like that and just rate them according to how I feel. I will definitely be rereading this book because I don't remember that many details, but I remember the feeling of loving it so much and being so pleasantly surprised. But it was so incredibly good, and I loved how it touched onto very realistic insecurities and topics about growing up and like kind of growing apart from your friends because you don't see them as often, and it was just very well done. And this was definitely my favorite Emily Henry book. If you like Emily Henry's writing but feel kind of the same way that I do, where I'm like, I like it but I don't love it, try this one because I think that this one might be your favorite if that's the case, because it was definitely my favorite and I love it. Then I have Taming Seven, which was also a predicted 5-star book for me. It's by Chloe Walsh. It's the 5th book in the Boys of Torment series, which is one of my absolute favorite series of all time. And the guy in this book, Gypsy, I had been waiting, like also Claire, the girl in this book, I had been waiting for their book since like book 1. And I think I've talked a lot about this in a reading wrap up, my disappointments, I don't know, my expectations, what I did really love about this book. So I'm not going to get into all of that, but it wasn't a 5-star for me. I think it was like a 4.25, 4 stars. I did still really love it. I just wish that it had been longer because we got 2 books, like 2 600-page books for all the other couples, and we got like 1 500-page book for this one. And I just feel like they could have used a bit more time and just, yeah. Anyway, but I did really, really enjoy this one. I love the guy in this book, Gypsy. His story was so heartbreaking. I just feel like Claire, the girl in this book, didn't really get that much of a plot besides being in love with Gypsy. So that's like, those are my problems with the book, but I still really love this book, obviously because it's in my favorites video and it's also pretty high up on my favorites list. I love these characters, I love this universe, and I can't wait for the next book in this series. And I think that I heard at least something with publishing and whatever, with her publishing contract, said that all the couples were just going to get 1 book, but I think everyone expressed their negative opinions on that. So I think they kind of took that back and all the other couples are going to get 2 books again, and Claire and Gypsy are also going to get another book. If I'm correct, like I saw that somewhere and I'm really hoping that because I think that their story is not done yet, but I did really enjoy this one. It's also obviously the 5th one in the series, so I can't say too much, but it's also very much the class clown gold retriever type, but he was so sweet and so kind, and they were childhood best friends, and that's my favorite trope on the planet. So I also really enjoyed this book. Wasn't my favorite, but I still really loved it and it still belonged on this list. Next I have Swear on This Life by Renee Carlino. I loved this book. I thought the concept was so unique. It's about a girl who is in publishing, kind of in the publishing industry, and she reads a manuscript and then she figures out it's actually a manuscript written about her own life. Someone wrote a book about her life and her love story, and obviously the only person that could write that was the other person in that love story, and that's her childhood best friend and first love, and they are estranged, they don't talk up anymore, they had a huge falling out. And so she starts reading, she tracks him down, and you go back and forth between like the present timeline and the manuscript, but you read the past with her, like she's reading the manuscript and those are the past chapters. So it was incredibly cool and I loved it. I was so close to giving this 5 stars, but it just needed to be a little bit longer because it ended rather abruptly in my opinion. But I enjoyed this so much and I genuinely wish that this was longer. Like I would have read a book twice this size. It was very, very good and it was such a unique concept. However, the only thing is I got so confused with the names because you had the normal names, like the actual names of the characters, and then you also had like names that were very similar in the manuscript, and then in the manuscript there was a manuscript that also had similar names. So there were 3 girls' names that kind of sounded alike and then 3 guys' names that also sounded alike that you had to keep track of. And so I lost it. I lost the plot with that one, but it was very, very good and I would highly recommend it because I don't think a lot of people know about this book. Like it's not as popular as her other book, Before We Were Strangers. I think this one is better. I think this one is way, way better. So please, please put this one on your list. Then I have a book that pulled me out of a huge, huge, huge reading slump. Like I don't think I had finished a book in a month, like a little over a month. I had one of those reading slumps where you're like kind of contemplating, do I, like, was this it? Is my reading streak over? Like, do I just not like it anymore? Is no book doing it for me anymore? And then I read The Love Wager. I did not expect to love this. I did not expect, like, I think it has a 3.8 or something on Goodreads, and I do get influenced a lot going into a book by the Goodreads reviews, and this proved that I should not do that because, like I said, 3.8 on Goodreads. I gave this 4.75 stars. I just read this book at the exact time that I needed a quick, easy rom-com, and this one was filled with so much banter. It's friends to lovers. They kind of make a deal because they're both kind of unlucky in love, I think, and they had a one-night stand and they just become very good friends. And they make a deal, they go on dates at the same restaurant, and then if the dates don't go well, they just go and get food together. So they were kind of constantly on dates. This is a book where the main characters are together like 100% of the time. Like I think 95% of the time they were together, and it was so fun. And there's also a bit of fake dating in here, and I just loved seeing them fall in love, and he was so in love with her, and it was so incredibly sweet. And I did not have any expectations going into this, not any, because I had heard someone rave about it and give it like 7 stars, but the overall consensus was like 3.5 stars. It was good, but it wasn't anything great. And I usually don't love like rom-coms like these, which is like pure, absolutely just like rom-coms down to their core. I love more like drama and traumatic, emotional filled romances, whatever, or sports romances. By the way, I love sports romances, but I loved this book so much. I was laughing out loud. This was like almost a 5-star read to me. It was just so incredibly good. Like this was a rom-com done right. This is the perfect rom-com in my opinion. It was so quick, so easy, so banter-filled, so fast-paced. It wasn't like too much background information and drama that we didn't need. This was so quick to get through. So if you are in a reading slump, pick up this book. If you love the Friends to Lovers trope at least, if you enjoy that, please pick up this book. I loved it. However, the sad part is I was looking at Lynn Painter's other books, and aside from her young adult books, which I do want to read, like I think I read Better Than the Movies 2 years ago or something, I do want to read the next one in that series, or like duology, whatever, but her other adult romances don't really intrigue me, and I have also heard not the greatest like reviews on them, like not bad but not good, and like worse than this one, and they also don't really intrigue me. But I loved this so much that I hope that she comes out with something similar to this. And I do think it's the second book in a series, but the first one also doesn't really intrigue me, and I know that's kind of contradictory to what I just said about not letting the Goodreads reviews influence you, but here I am doing it again. I'm just a girl, but I did love this one. If you've read other books by Lynn Painter, like her adult books, please let me know if like anything like this, or like if I would enjoy them if I loved this. So pick this up if you need like a quick, easy rom-com pick me up. Then I have another book that is a 4.75 stars to me. Also, like this was, I think, my #1 book boyfriend from this year. I am obsessed with him. I want like someone like that for me. Let's play along. It's the 4th book in the Windy City series, also by Liz Tomford, the same as The Right Move. This is the 4th book. This was so good. I loved Isaiah. I hear some people call him Isaiah. I say Isaiah. I don't know if that's correct or whatever. I loved him, and Kennedy was also just a great female main character, and Isaiah was so incredibly obsessed. He was so in love. He had been in love with her for years, like crushing on her at least, and then her engagement with the wrong guy obviously breaks off, and he is like, okay, this is my chance. I'm going to show her how much I like her and like that we could be great together, whatever. So they accidentally get married in Vegas, which is usually not my favorite trope. I don't love that, but it was done very well. And then they have to kind of pretend that it wasn't an accident to save her job, because he is a pro baseball player and she is one of the athletic trainers for the team, the only female athletic trainer, and that's also a big part of this book, that she deals with a lot of sexism at her job. And it was just very sweet how he supported her, how they handled it, and it was so good. He was so incredibly patient, so patient with her. It was, I love him. I am in love with him. Like, I will not shut up about Isaiah Rhodes. He was fantastic. This was definitely my favorite book in the series, and again, skip the first one, go right into the second one, and then read all of them. They're so good, and I can't wait for the next one to come out. That's the last book in this series. The found family aspect in this book is also just great. And I loved Isaiah's story. He was very much also golden retriever, flirty boy type, but he had like a very sad background story that was also done very well. It didn't take over like the romance, and also Kennedy's story didn't, but it was just so sweet. And he was like a very warm character, very just like easygoing, like affectionate, and she just wasn't raised that way. And he's kind of teaching her to be more easygoing with touch and affection. It was so good. I want to reread this one. I'm a bit closer to the camera because if I step back, like the frame is just way too dark and you can barely see me. But now we are getting to the 2 books that I gave 5 stars this year. If you have if you have watched my previous reading wrap up like I did in the beginning of the year, you might know what these books are. But one of them is If Only I Had Told Her by Laura Nowlin. This is the 2nd book in the duology of If He Had Been With Me duology. Is it duet? Duology? I don't know. Anyway, this is the 2nd book after He Had Been With Me. I loved If He Had Been With Me. I gave that one, first I gave it 3.5 stars because I hated the ending. Like, I was like, what the hell did you leave me with, Laura Nowlin? Then I loved it because I just couldn't stop thinking about it, so I went back and I gave it 5 stars. Then this book came out. There was not supposed to be a 2nd book in this duology, whatever, but she decided to continue, like not continue, but like give a bit more of a well-rounded ending to the story, and I loved it. I have heard so many people say that this book did not need to be there and that they didn't love it. I disagree. I loved it. This was like a 6-star book to me. I cried so much, like so much. That's also, if you want to see me cry about this book, go to my reading wrap-up of the beginning of the year. I was bawling in my bed at 2 AM. Obviously, like, I don't want to say too much because this is the 2nd book, but it's about Autumn and Finn, and they are childhood best friends, and they kind of, you follow them. It's kind of like a coming of age story. You follow them over the years and you see them grow up together, and then they kind of grow estranged when they get to high school, I think, like secondary school. And it was just it's such a sad story. It's such a sad story. Like, my heart turns heavy every single time I think about this book and this story and this boy. I loved the fact that they got a 2nd book, and I did think that it was like a much more well-rounded ending, and I cried during this one, like so much. Like I said, I did not cry during the first one. This one moved me more. Like, this one hurt my heart more. And I gave it 6 stars. If you want to get your heart broken, I would highly recommend these books. Like, I can't think about this without like my heart actually hurting in my chest. Also, this was told from 3 different points of view. So the first part is told in Finn's perspective, the male love interest. Then the last part is told in Autumn's perspective, the female love interest. And then the middle part was told from Finn's best friend, Jack's perspective. And at first I was like, excuse me, like, I don't want you in this book. What are you doing here? I just want to read about Autumn and Finn. His part in this book was my favorite. Turned out to be my favorite. I cried the most during his 3rd of the book, and it was so incredibly good. It's YA, so if you are younger or if you're my age, I'm 22, and I loved this book, so I would highly recommend it. I gave it to a friend of mine, and she read both books, and she also cried and got her heart broken. So I hope that it can do the same for you, but I loved it, pick it up. Then I have my other 6-star book of the year, and that is Magnolia Park's Into the Dark. This is just a 6-star series to me in general. I love Magnolia and BJ's story so much, and I thought this was such a good ending. I also bawled my eyes out with this book, and I thought it was so well done. I think the beginning felt a bit different than Jessa Hastings' normal, like, Magnolia Park's world writing, and then afterwards she got back into the groove, and I highlighted so much in this book. I don't know if you can see it. Like, I don't know, whatever. So many people know about this series, so many people have read it. If you have not, please give it a shot. It's so good. It's so good. It's very Gossip Girl-like in the drama sense, but it's very poetically written, and it's written in very beautiful metaphors, and just, it's so creative. This took creative writing to another level, in my opinion. It's so well done, and the characters are all so fleshed out in the series, and they have such distinctive personalities. So much drama happens, and this book broke my heart, not only for Magnolia and for BJ, but also for another character, and then also because something very, very sad and traumatic happened, and this is kind of like how they deal with that and how they get their happily ever after 3 books of constant drama and like going at each other's throats, basically. If you have not picked up this series, please, please, please do. This series has kind of changed my reading book life. I loved this so much, and I don't think anything is ever going to top Boys of Torment and Magnolia Park series for me, but I thought that this was a very good ending, and I loved it. These 2 were genuinely my only 5-star books of the year. Like, that's how much I love them. I gave these books 5 stars. They were both actually 6-star books, and I read them back to back. I read my favorite 2 books of the year back to back. So I got my heart broken. This was in February. I have not had a 5-star book since February. Anyway, I think I cried for a week straight in February reading these 2 books back to back, but it was so incredibly good, and I can't say anything about this book if you have not read the Magnolia Park series. Obviously, I don't want to spoil anything for you, but I think you should definitely read it. I would highly recommend. I loved this book. I underlined so many things, as I always do with Jessa Hastings' Magnolia Park series. Daisy Hates books. They're so incredibly good. That's it. That's all I have to say. So good. Those were all of the books that I wanted to talk about. I wanted to keep this video quite short. It's not short. It's probably like half an hour long. If you have stuck around to this point, thank you so much. Through the lighting changes and the whatever, it's now 4 o'clock. It's super dark in my room, and it's 4 o'clock. I can't wait for spring when the days are not this short and dark. But anyway, thank you so much for watching. I am hoping to post a lot more coming year, because I got so busy with school and I did not post for a while, and I think I haven't posted a YouTube video in like a month and a half. And every single time that I post a video, I'm like, okay, now I want to keep it going. I want to post every week. I just get so busy with school. I don't know how people do this. I don't know how they like combine work, school, friends, reading. If you want to talk about books, you also have to read the books, social life, cleaning, just being productive, working out, and also have a YouTube channel. It takes so much time to film a video and then also edit it. But I'm going to try to be more consistent and post more this year, like vlogs and also book videos. So if you want to stick around for that, please subscribe and like this video, and I will hopefully see you in the next year. Bye!